No budget's going to be 100% correct, but it's putting a plan in place. It's having a strategy. It's saying that from a financial perspective, we've decided to go this way. It's an important component to know your numbers, to be mindful of your numbers, and to plan forward and to plan in advance. There's no point in selling a product that costs more than you can charge your customers. I mean, that's a surefire way to end a business.
What one key piece of advice would you like to give to all the entrepreneurs watching and listening today?
Entrepreneurship is a skill set. You don't have to be born out of the womb with an entrepreneurial mindset. It's a muscle. You just have to work at it and it happens.
Hey, and welcome to another episode of the Business Growth Show. I'm your host, Ethan Cassiotis, and today I have an awesome guest. His name is Chris Kondou, and he is the founder of KanDoConsult Advisory, whose purpose is to create joyful, purpose-driven businesses that generate financial prosperity for their people and build legacies for future generations. And Chris is an ex-corporate CFO who has worked alongside CEOs and business owners across a range of industries in manufacturing, wholesale, and professional services. And his expertise in driving financial strategy enabled a startup toy wholesaler grow from 2 million to 20 million in revenue over 5 years with strong profit results, which after all, profit is the most important metric for a business. And Chris has also gone through a midlife transformation by starting his advisory business just a few short years ago, proving that entrepreneurship is a skill set, a muscle that can be created at any time. You just have to go and work on it. Chris also speaks to the power of mentorship and is passionate about helping business owners succeed. Welcome, Chris, and thank you for being on the Business Growth Show.
Great to be with you, Ethan. Thank you for inviting me. I'm a big fan of your podcast. Your show with Jim Penman, I think the creator of Jim's Group, remains to this day one of my favorite podcasts on business growth, attitude, and success. So you're looking forward to spending some time with you.
Yeah, awesome, mate. Well, thank you for the feedback. Yeah, that was a great episode there. So everybody go check that out. You've heard it from a avid listener here, and I'm sure it's going to be a great show, mate, for everyone watching and listening today. And you are a successful entrepreneur. So yeah, for those people who don't know who you are, just introduce yourself by telling us more about you and your journey.
Yeah, sure, Ethan. So I started my entrepreneurship journey in my 50s, just a few short years ago. Prior to that, I was perfectly happy in a senior corporate role as a CFO, a journey that took me from a trainee accountant in the pharmaceutical industry back in the 90s, all the way to developing a skill set for financial strategy, which I've used in terms of working with corporates over the last 25 years. I suppose I was happy until I wasn't. I felt something had changed. Being in corporate, the interview bonus probably didn't mean as much to me as I thought it did previously. I probably wanted to have a bigger voice. I wanted to help more people across different businesses. And ultimately, I wanted to redefine myself and my expectations about myself. And I had all these thoughts about transformation and reinvention for a long, long time, Ethan, but I was sort of stuck in inertia, paralysis. Again, my identity was so tied up to being a corporate CFO. And it took me a long time to actually make a difference and actually change my path. And ultimately, that's what led me to start my advisory business, KanDoConsult. And I think I just woke up one day and I just had enough. Whether it's enough of being average. And I always say to people, I love this quote by Goethe, who said, "At the moment of commitment, the universe conspires to assist you." And I really believe that, because when I did finally make the decision to leave corporate, everything changed. I started the advisory business, and sort of my path to becoming an entrepreneur sort of came from that, and little steps. Me going out to the business community and getting to know people, eventually talking to clients and taking advantage of opportunities is a skill set that I didn't have. I mean, you said at the start of the program, entrepreneurship is a muscle. I think maybe some people are born with it as they come out of the womb, but I truly, truly believe that it's a mindset. It's a growth mindset. You can take charge of your career, your life. You just have to have the willingness to do so.
Yeah.
I joke with my family that I'm going through middle-essence, Ethan. Children have a season of change called adolescence. So in midlife, it's middle-essence.
I love it.
So
Awesome, mate.
so yeah.
Yeah,
So I
it's a very cool transition. I love that. And it's so interesting, right? Because a lot of people in your space would be like, well, I've done this for decades, right? Or whatever. Who is it to me to go and pursue something, right? And sometimes you need to be at the bottom, so to speak, to then have that decision and that commitment that you did. So well done for doing that and sticking at it, right? And potentially some people, from what I hear around, maybe it's around the age of the children, like you mentioned, right? It's like when the kids are a little bit younger, you're like, oh, let me, even though I'm not happy, I'm going to stay in the job, right? Or whatever it is for a little while, but maybe, there's a little bit less risk as I get a little bit older. The kids are a bit older and it's, I can do that, but it comes to a point where, yeah, if you're not growing, you're dying. And if you're going backwards, then a change has to happen as well.
Very true. I think it's also fear. I think being in my 50s, the connotation with the community in a corporate role is, oh, Chris, you got to be careful. You're 50 now, or you're in your 50s. They can get rid of you at any time. You're a liability. You've been loyal, but you could easily be put out to pasture, which I think is so wrong because I think your 50s are a really exciting time. It is middle lessons. And another reason why I started the business, Ethan, is I read a book called From Strength to Strength from a guy called Arthur Brooks. And he talks about two types of intelligence. There's fluid intelligence, which is when you're young and your 30s and 20s, you're very good at rapid learning and problem solving. Okay. And I equate that to a lot of my career as an accountant, which is my background, which, accountant is doing the numbers, making sure that the numbers balance, and it looks at what's happened in the past. In his book, Arthur Brooks also talks about crystallized intelligence, which starts when you turn 50, which is my age group. And it's all about wisdom and mentorship and bringing things together, and which is exactly what my advisory business ended up being. It's about financial strategy. It looks at why things happened and more importantly, what could happen tomorrow. So I firmly believe that I'm using that intelligence in this age group to actually help clients by looking at that strategic piece holistically, and allows me to grow my business and add real value to my clients. So there's a lot of benefits to being in that age group, and I think it's a really exciting time.
Yeah, love it, mate. So true. And this is that diversity piece, right, in a business, not just about having males and females, but different cultures, right, and different age groups, like you said, right, in the business, because then you start to get a lot of different perspectives, right, in terms of who you hire, but also who you partner with, external people like yourself, right, if you're needing help specifically with the numbers side of things or whatever it is like that, it gives you those different perspectives, which I love. And KFC, Colonel Sanders, right, started the business in his 60s and one of the biggest food businesses in the world, right? So it's never too late. And I think with health these days, which we'll probably talk about a bit later, is that, medical system is so thin that we're going to be living like likely past 100, right? And everything like that. So it's never too late in that way to start something. So well done for going against the grain and doing it, and now doing something that you're passionate in, and committing to the growth, side of it as well, because that's a big part that they don't teach you. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they were like, if they told you like what you'd have to go through from a personal transformation journey and like all these setbacks in a business, most people probably wouldn't do it, right?
They wouldn't. They wouldn't. It's amazing.
Yeah, so
Um,
it's awesome, man. And so let's talk about what you do now. So you've got your CFO, advisory business there. So for people that go like, well, I'm not a big business, I don't have a CFO type of thing like that. You don't have to be, right, to understand that there's a lot of different numbers there. So how does like your CFO business help, businesses, succeed, and why it's important?
yeah, absolutely. So at the heart of it, Ethan, we create financial prosperity for business. Okay. Every business knows how much revenue their customers are making for them, but very few know how much profit their customers are making. Of course, there is a difference because you can't pay the rent with revenue. So my whole business model is geared towards around profitability and cash growth. Whether you're a multi-million dollar business or a fairly new startup, um, there's value in engaging my services because firstly, I'm an outsourced function, so you only use me as you need me. So if I'm working with a startup, it could be a situation where I come into the picture every quarter just before board reporting time. Okay, we go through their numbers, we go through their financials. I join the board meeting, okay, and I tell them a story, some consistency in their reporting. But I don't need to be in that business day in, day out. So whilst a startup, for instance, can't necessarily afford a full-time CFO, they can afford someone to come in on a more ad hoc basis to give them that value, ask those questions, and help them grow as a business. Because ultimately, my role is to enable them to grow. And you can't grow a business if you're not generating cash flow and you're not generating profit. If you look at the reasons why small businesses fail, and I think the statistics are 2 out of 3 businesses fail in the first 5 years because of a lack of that cash generation and generating profit. So to answer your question, it's not just the domain of large businesses. You can tap into the services of myself at various points. And as I said, it's not a full-time resource. So the beauty of that is I can come and go as I'm needed. It could be around budget discussions. Ultimately, the way I work with clients, Nathan, is we start with the end in mind. Okay, so we talk about, well, what's the business plan? Okay, what's the objective? What's the goal? Why are we doing this? Okay, and is it to sell the business? Is it to pass it down to the next generation? Legacy is a very big part of what I do. Having worked, a lot of my backgrounds is having worked in family businesses, and legacy is a touch point. It has a huge impact on future generations. I don't think we talk about that enough. So it's really starting with the end in mind. What's the business plan, and how are you living that business plan in your day-to-day running of the business? The sorts of things that I help clients through is looking at budgets, looking at their financial reporting, especially if they're reporting to a board. We need to go back to the business plan. We need to revisit the business plan. Otherwise there's no story there. There's no consistency, and the business doesn't really know where they're going. They're sort of reacting negatively or approaching opportunities, but again, what's it all for? So it's very important for me to have that discussion, to engage with a client that, I know exactly where they're headed, what they want to achieve, and I'm just the vehicle or the catalyst to make that happen. I'm not in their business every day, so my role is to come in always with that business plan front of mind.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, those business owners, running the business is hard work. It's complex. There's lots of things, lots of balls they need to juggle. Whereas my role is to keep that business plan in focus into everything that I do. And we can talk about some of the value add that I give with clients.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Love it. So, so true. And I think it's like extremely important, especially for the right brainer type of business owners that are the more creative, emotional ones that are not as, left brain logical, right? With numbers. So if you're not that good with numbers, you definitely need someone like Chris, right? From the outside to get you to understand them and what, actions you can take from them. Or even even if you are more left brain logical, like I was fortunate, even though I dropped out of school, I went back to do an MBA and I did a lot of the accounting finance subjects. So I understand these things, right? But you've done the accounting side, the CPA side, you're a master at the numbers side. A lot of people haven't done that. So it's like how to transfer that to somebody. Are they going to pick it up? Or as the business owner, is it really what you should be focusing on? Yes, you need to understand the numbers to an extent, but you're likely better off getting an expert, right? This is where the outsourcing part of a business is, like Chris, instead of trying to work things out for years, just get someone in for a quarter, a month, whatever it is, right? That's needed. Understand the numbers. This is the things that we need to look at. And that's going to, take your business to the next level. So I think it's
Yeah,
so important. Yeah,
I
definitely.
think so too. And I think there's a stereotype that, numbers are boring. Here comes the accountant. Okay, let's throw some paper airplanes at them. It's not as glamorous as marketing or advertising or some of those other industries, but it's a stereotype and it's a false stereotype. I think financial numbers are a powerful asset because it allows you to be curious. You can ask a question from anyone in the organization, from the CEO right down to the cleaner, because you're looking holistically at the whole business. It's actually quite a powerful tool because in your fingertips, you've got the data. And your role is I mean, accounting is looking at what's happened. Financial strategy, which is what I do, is about telling what's going to happen or what the future holds.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's a great
So it's
point, just quickly,
storytelling.
Chris.
It's
Yeah.
storytelling.
I think it's a great point that you said there, right? Because a lot of people just think, oh, I've got zero. I can run my profit and loss, my balance sheet, or, things like that. And I can see the numbers, but that's the past. Like you said, you can't change that. Where the power is what you would be doing is around, managing cash flow, looking at predicting that, looking at the budgeting, like what is happening in the future and then doing that. So do you want to talk a little bit more about maybe those things around the cash flow and the budgeting
Yeah, sure.
scalability about that? Yeah. What's the importance of that and how can those things that we're doing there, like, impact us on the decisions, and the growth?
Absolutely. Well, we're coming close to the last quarter of the financial year, so this is a perfect opportunity for a business to look at their budgets. And budgets are a great tool for someone in my position because it gives us a holistic view of the business. So we get a chance to look at the P&L. Um, Operations people have P&L responsibilities. Okay, but it's always, you're rushed from one area to another. Doing a budget gives us the opportunity to sit back and look at the business in a whole perspective. We look at the big, if we just leave revenue aside for a moment, if we look at the business expenses, we really drill down to what are they spending their money on. One situation with a client that we did not too long ago is we looked at their insurances. Their insurances next to payroll was probably the largest cost center in their businesses. They've got a big property portfolio, and they were spending over $200,000 a year on insurances. So what we did is we came into the business with an outside lens that we're using the same broker for 20 years. What we did is we put their insurances out to tender. Okay, we made sure that there was continuity in their risk profile, and we ended up saving them $100,000. We were able to reduce that insurance spend by half. Now that's $100,000 saving, Ethan, that went straight to their bottom line, went straight to their profit, went straight to their cash flow. So it's being mindful of your expenses. It's being curious to ask, is there a better way of doing our expenses? And that only happens really when we afford the opportunity to sit back and look at the business and look at what are the key areas of their spending, and really looking forward. And sometimes it means bringing outside people in. Um, Sometimes it's looking at, for a product-based businesses where I've had a lot of experience working with manufacturing and wholesale companies, it's looking at the margins that you make on a product. Okay. So there's no point in selling a product that costs more than you can charge your customers. I mean, that's a surefire way to end a business. So we look at all those things. We look at the profitability side of things. We look at products and segments, how profitable they are. And we're not just focused on the revenue, okay? Because revenue doesn't give you the answers. It's not the key to long-term longevity. The key to long-term longevity for a business is cash flow, getting cash flow in, and it's profitability. You need to, I mean, someone said this to me quite a while ago. You should always run your business, Ethan, as if you were going to sell it. Okay. Because one day you're going to have to make a decision. You're either going to have to sell it or pass it down to the next generation. Again, it goes back to your business plan, what your goals are. So having a lean business is really important. And what we do is we bring that information to light to the business owners or to the board. Okay, by refocusing on what's really important to the business. And ultimately, we're in the business of identifying gaps in a business. Okay, everyone knows about things like subscriptions. How many business subscriptions do we have, and how often do they get reviewed? I find that in a lot of businesses, once spending is commenced, they very rarely go back and look at it. And that's, again, the beauty of a budget. How many licenses do we have? All those sorts of things add up to a holistic whole. And the same goes for revenue projections. Okay. Again, the question would be back to the business plan. Well, what's our revenue projection for next year? Okay. Some businesses, it's like, well, Chris, just take last year and add 3%. I said, well, no. That's not, again, what does your business plan say? Are you in the business of just increasing by 3%? Sure, things are hard, things are difficult in certain industries. Construction is doing it really difficult at the moment. But let's look at the bigger picture. Let's look at your business plan. What is it you want to achieve? Why can't it be a lot more than plus 3%? Don't settle yourself short. Goes back to what I said earlier about being the master of or the designer or the architect of your life. Business owners have to do the same thing, and they do lose their focus after a while. It's easier for them to say, because they've got so many business pressures, well, let's just add 3%, Chris, but that's not the right answer. And so my role is to remind them of why they're in business. And that's not just settle. Okay. And you may have to tweak things. You may have to look at your industry. You may have to look at new pathways, all those sorts of things. So a budget is great for that reason. It's not about being 100% correct. No budget's going to be 100% correct, but it's putting a plan in place. It's having a strategy. It's saying that from a financial perspective, we've decided to go this way. And my role as a CFO, as the financial strategist, is to say to the board, to the business owner, these are the benefits. There's prosperity for you and your people if you go down this road.
Yeah.
And everyone knows what's at stake. And it allows us to look at a bigger picture, and then I leave them alone to do what they need to do on a day-to-day operations point of view. And then we revisit that. We revisit that quarterly. We revisit that every so often, and guide them to success, which is what it's all about. A business employs the services of a financial strategist like myself because they want to grow. They want to, they don't want to just put up with their current business position.
Yeah.
And that's the benefits of looking at your numbers Okay, because it's a stereotype that numbers are boring. They're not boring. And it also leads to mentorship as well, and leadership, because again, a lot of business owners, as I'm sure you know, Ethan, are put in that position, but they don't necessarily have the skill set. As you touched on it before, they're not across everything in business. So it's, they don't have a finance background. They may be great in sales. It goes back to different personalities. And I think that's really important. That's really important. And I think part of what I do from a strategic position is mentor them. You know, that I had a budget meeting a few weeks back, and I had to say to the CEO, you don't have to come into this meeting with all the answers. Just because you're the owner, you can step back a little bit and just see what the room comes back to you with. And I think that's very powerful for for the right business owner. It does go back to mentorship. It goes back to leadership. I think certainly in my corporate life, there is a perception in corporate that you can't make a mistake. I don't know if you felt like that as well, or you're supposed to cover up your mistake. But most of us make mistakes most of the time. I mean, in starting my advisory business 2.5 years ago, I can assure you, I made plenty of mistakes in that area. So it's a continual process. It's an important component to know your numbers, to be mindful of your numbers, and to plan forward and to plan in advance. Um,
Yeah.
Another thing that we do is we look at a 12-month cash flow forecast. How stressful is it for a business owner? They've got to make sure that they pay staff on time, and they've got enough in payroll. So we project it out. We look at 6 months and 12 months, and see what the position is going to be like, and what can we tweak. Okay, can we collect our receivables faster? Most businesses aren't like the tax office. They're not a big corporate client. So guess what? Most customers need to be reminded to pay their account. And there's some great automation that you can put into your business to make that happen. But we model it. What's the impact of customers paying, even 10 days earlier, or 7 days earlier, to your cash flow? You've got more cash flow generating through your business. So there's benefits there. So it's tweaking the numbers. The other thing is just being mindful of your core metrics. As a business owner, you got to understand what your cash flow is, what your profitability is, how much cash is coming in and out of your business. I think that's really, really critical. Whether it's a dashboard, that you've got to be empowered to know those numbers, and as is your pipeline. You need to understand, well, what's projected to come through next month or next quarter. Traditionally, December, January is a really slow time in Australia. I think every business in the country sort of winds down because of the summer holiday. So what impact is that going to have on your business, on your cash flow, on your ability to pay your staff and your suppliers? So it's an operational focus, and it's really sort of lending on my previous experiences with working closely as the 2IC with the managing director and the CEO. It's very much an operational focus, Ethan. Okay. And that's what a CFO does. That's the advisory side of the business. It's understanding your operation, okay, your staff, and how your business ticks day to day. And that's how you can add the most value.
Yeah. Awesome, Chris. Thanks for sharing all of those amazing metrics that I definitely agree with on so important, especially the cash flow profitability. But then, like you said, what are the metrics that bring that? What are the numbers that create the pipeline, which then creates the revenue and the profit and the cash flow and everything like that? Because it's all part of it. And I love the mentorship side that you said, because I say the similar thing, right? Is like, if someone doesn't know about the numbers, you got to at least know enough so that when you're working with Chris, you understand the numbers, right? Or when you're working with somebody else, you don't have to know everything. You just got to know enough. So I think what you do to upskill them enough on the numbers is great. And then you put your expertise on top of that and like supercharge it basically. And then they know how to take on that information and then implement that right in the business as well, which is really, really powerful. And I think let's touch now on a different little side of things around like the wellness, mindset side of things right now. I know we quickly had a little bit of a discussion before we got on here today. And I think, a lot of people are pushing themselves out there. There's a lot of mindset shifts, growth, challenges, all these things that pop up with your energy, with just, how you're showing up. I'd love to know your thoughts on, that journey, of entrepreneurship and that well-being really, right? Of doing what you're doing in the business. Yeah.
Yeah, great question. I think it's something that for most of my career in a corporate role, wasn't even discussed. We never talked about um, time management or growth or how do you achieve peak performance. I started my business and I just assumed I was going to go from one 9 to 5 role into another 9 to 5 role. Um, so it's been an evolution for me to understand, well, there's different there's different types of days for you. And in many ways, running a business is a bit like being a sports person. Okay, being an elite athlete. In many ways, you've got to be an elite athlete to have a successful business. And what do elite athletes do? They've got performance days where maybe they're presenting, maybe they need to meet deadlines, and they've got to focus, they've got to be on top of their game for that day. But they don't have to be in that situation every day of the week. And I think corporate seems to imply, well, Chris, every day is a performance day because, you're hired by a big corporation to work 5 days a week and every day is the same. And the reality is it's not. You can't maintain that level of focus. So what really sort of my sort of light bulb moment, Nathan, was realizing, hey, you know what? Running a business is like being an athlete, and you're going to have your focus days and your performance days, and then you're going to have your days where you're going to work on the business, you're going to review the business, and that could just be a quiet day where you're not answering any calls or any any talking to any clients. You're just absorbed in reviewing your business. Okay. You may have to go somewhere, and I do that often, go somewhere to my local coffee place and, spend half a day there, just with my laptop. Good coffee is really important. And, think about things or go for a walk. I'm very fortunate to live near the beach, so I love taking my shoes off and just walking through the sand. Just that whole nature piece is really important. But it gets you to open up and think about what you do, and you'd be surprised what comes through your head. And it's I did this the other day and I thought of someone that I know that I think would help a client, and it just came to me during that moment while I was walking in the sand, for some reason. So not every day is the same and not every day should be the same. And I think we've got to business owners have to treat themselves like they are an elite athlete. And it's a roller coaster. You're going to have different days, and really plan that. And I'm a big believer that if it's not in your calendar, it's not going to happen. And one of the things that I've been empowered to do recently is to, put that in the calendar. Put a performance day when you've got to really be on your game 100%. And then you've got a focus day, which is just you in a coffee shop, going for a walk along the beach, absorbing the events of the past week, because that's the only way you're gonna grow and add value. Otherwise you set yourself up to burn out. I firmly believe that running a business is a long-term game, and you've got to, your health and fitness is so important. A friend of mine said this to me. He was one of the reasons why I did start my advisory business, Ethan. He said to me, he's an ex-journalist who started his own local community newspaper. And he said to me that, Chris, you know what? I think if everyone started their own business, the world and the economy would be so much better. Okay. Now, obviously, in reality, we can't all do this, and we need business owners and we need people to work in businesses. But talk about there's a productivity issue at the moment. But just imagine if more of us did start our own business, and we were accountable for the value that we add to clients. I think the world will be a better place. So there's nothing like it. You touched on how difficult it is, and it is. It's difficult. You fail constantly. I'm still failing constantly, but that's the only way you're going to learn, and you just got to pick yourself up. It's a long-term game. You eat glass a lot, and it's an evolving process, especially like for someone like me with a finance background. What did I know about sales? What did I know about marketing or branding? What did I know about walking into a room and talking to people? You know, but the more you do it, it speaks to not just about your skill set, it speaks to your whole identity, Ethan, in terms of who you are. And that's why being able to redefine who you are is so powerful, because it's, everyone says, okay, you've got to have a growth mindset, but what does that actually mean? It's you can achieve what you put your sights to. It's like that quote by Goethe that, at the moment of commitment, the universe conspires to make it happen. You've got to want to happen, want it to happen, sorry. You've got to be the architect of your own life, but you've got to take the action to make it happen. And I firmly believe you do need to live into your future. I'm sure, Ethan, you must do that as well. You've got to live now as if you are in your future. So I'm thinking already that, I'm looking at scaling my business and I want to grow my business. So as far as I'm aware, I'm already there. I'm already there. I'm preparing, I'm planning, I'm budgeting. I'm doing all the things that I tell my clients to do. I'm there now. Okay, because I know I'm going to get there. Okay, and I've got to put the processes in place, the systems in place to get there. And again, that's what I tell my clients. You've got to live in your future. Okay, you're a $5 million business today. Okay, what does your business look like if you're a $10 million business? Okay, well, what does that mean in terms of staff? What does that mean in terms of product? What does that mean in terms of resources? Live in your future and work backwards. Okay.
Definitely, mate.
Um,
Yeah, so powerful. It was a great segment for everybody there, right? What Chris shared with us around the well-being, the mindset side. I love getting out of your environment, going to the coffee shop to get you to think differently, going for a walk. If you're lucky on the beach, and the grounding side is really great for your energy as well, right? Barefoot, whether it's grass, the sand, something like that. I do that, with some breaths as well. Is a great way to reset, from any stress or performance that you've had to do for that period of day. And then all those other things. And the identity piece that you said is so critical, right? Because everyone in a job, they have a job and they're normally linked to that job. So then as you got to change to a business owner identity, right? And then eventually it's like, okay, it's a bigger business owner or it's an investor. You talk about, selling the business, right? Ideally build it to sell, where you've got to think like an investor, be an investor in terms of an identity that way there of looking at it differently than if you were just doing everything in that business. So I think that's so important. And I agree with all the stuff about like what I've learned is that what's showing up in your life today is an upgrade to your identity and your mindset and your beliefs from like 6 to 12 months ago, right? So what you changed back then has now taken some time to create, to magnetize, to be attracted to you right now. So then, like Chris said, you have to think about yourself in a year's time or many years' time or whatever that vision is of who you are, and then believe it in the now. right? That what's my identity? What's my beliefs that support that in the present tense? Even if I'm not there yet, but believe I have to believe it now, then the universe will conspire, right? To you going, okay, well, this is now what
Love it.
Chris
Love it.
is doing, right? And it will start to happen. The timing of that is dependent on a lot of things, but it will happen, right? So as long as you, like Chris said, you're taking the action, you've got the right beliefs behind that, and everything like that there, mate. So I love that section. That was very powerful for everyone, right? To listen to that again and implement that, right, into what you're doing in your life and your business, and it'll create more success. And I guess, Chris, you've shared, so much value with us here today. And I guess as we're starting to wrap up, what one key piece of advice would you like to give to all the entrepreneurs watching and listening today?
Entrepreneurship is a skill set. You don't have to be born out of the womb with an entrepreneurial mindset. It's a muscle. You just have to work at it and it happens.
Awesome, mate. I love it.
That's the one bit of advice because I always thought, well, I'm not an entrepreneur. It's like, but no, you are. You look at all the things I'm doing. I'm out there. I'm thinking about growth. I'm thinking about different clients in different industries. I'm thinking about, who do I need to talk to? So it's all possible, but you've got to be open to it. And I said it before, you've got to live in the future. And most importantly, I think, Ethan, you've got to just have some fun with it as well. Let's not take it all too seriously. Business should be about fun as well. You should be able to have a laugh about it. And
Yeah.
I think that combination is really important. And I think it's also a good way of leading your life.
Yeah, definitely, mate. It's got to be fun. And if it's not, quit the thing that you're doing like Chris has done, and go do the thing that's going to be fun, right? That you're enjoying more there. And bring that as part of it. And then the people that you've got working for you will love it as well, right? Because it is fun, whether they're in your business or just partners and things working in your business. And that's what we're here to really enjoy our life, right? And the business is the vehicle behind that. So love it, mate. So many amazing points that you share with us here today. And yeah, we connected, through our networks. I learned about your awesome journey from, being a CFO at various companies to now being the founder of KanDoConsult Advisory. You're an awesome guy, mate. So knowledgeable. And great to be able to, learn more about you, be at events with you, and see the growth that you've had, right, in this period of time. Because I definitely have seen that from the outside, mate. And you're someone that just keeps moving forward and going, okay, what do I need to learn? What do I need to believe about myself? Who do I need to speak to? And just keep moving forward. So I think it's a testament to you, doing it in the 50s, there and still being in that growth side of things. So well done for taking that step that a lot of people would, be very fearful for. And you're an awesome guy, mate. I'm sure you continue to create, joyful, purpose-driven businesses that generate financial prosperity for their people and build legacies for future generations. Very grateful that we connected, mate. Look forward to partnering with you. So, Chris, how can people find you and get in contact with you?
Thanks, Ethan. That was awesome. People can find me on all the socials on LinkedIn and just drop me a line at Chris Kondou. My website is kandoconsult.com.au. So there's many ways you can reach out to me. Please message me. Love to have a chat. And just finally, thank you. Thanks for your positive feedback there. Really appreciate that. As I said to you before, I'm a big fan of your show. You've got some great, amazing people. And it's like a business blueprint, I think, to success. So well done on the show. Keep doing what you're doing. And because we're all learning and we're continuing to learn. So we're all perpetual students and in many ways, you're leading the way. So thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Much appreciated, mate. Great to hear the feedback. And definitely check Chris out. Connect with him. LinkedIn, go to his website, can do consult there. Reach out to Chris, right? He'll have a chat with you, whether he can help you point you in the right direction. Definitely very knowledgeable around those numbers and, doing what you're doing in that business on projecting where it's going and then helping you to get there, right? There on that journey. So, mate, it's been a pleasure interviewing you and thanks for being on the Business Growth Show.
Thanks, Nathan.
Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening to this show where we talk about everything on business growth. And please like, subscribe, and leave us a 5-star review. You can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube as Ethan Cassiotis, or visit my website, ethancassiotis.com. If you want to grow and scale your business, you can reach out to me on any platform to see if we're a good fit. I completely agree with you. Or do I? The only way you know is if you tune in next time. So until next time, remember that our business grows when we learn skills and take action using them in spite of fear. So remember to design your growth and results.